Hello, I'm Junya Makino, a Japanese violin player. I've been actively playing modern music and contemporary music in Europe and Japan. I would like to share you the history of 20th century music. This is going to be a series, and today I focus on the decade from 1920 to 1930. Last time, from 1910 to 1920, I focused on that 10 years. But if you haven't watched it yet, so I recommend to watch that video at first. Probably you could understand the context of this class more, so I put a link in the summary, so please check it out. So let's take a look at the 10 years from 1920. This happened between 1920 and 1930. Please look at here. Yes. And countries around the world are seriously thinking about how to create a peaceful world after World War I. The United States is entering an era known as the Roaring Twenties. Due to the influence of the war, the American economy achieved unprecedented prosperity, and mass production and mass consumption lifestyle were established. Cars, movies, and radio became popular as new technologies at that time, and the spread of home appliances also enriched our lives. The movie The Great Gatsby, based on the American writer Fitzgerald, is set in Long Island and New York, and embodies the wealthy people of the Golden Twenties. If you watch that movie, you can see what America looked like in the 1920s. After the war, Europe was also gradually regaining its composure, basically based on international cooperation. However, on the other hand, the fascist party led by Mussolini of Italy has emerged, and Hitler has strengthened in Germany, and the reaction after World War I has taken a solid step forward. Then, the Soviet Union, the first social nation in human history, was born, and the world has begun to watch out for their movements. So now, what happened to music after the war? There are two new trends in music. One is music called Neoclassicism in music. It was born under the theme of going back to the old days, incorporating Baroque music, such as Bach and Chopin, and classical music such as Haydn and Mozart, without moody expressionism reminiscent of the very unstable situation before World War II, and impressionism that is vague and unrelating. The characteristics of music are bright, cheerful, simple style and melody. It is exactly the same as the characteristic of Baroque music and classical music. Representative composers include Stravinsky, who was introduced in the previous episode, German composer Paul Hindemith, French composer Darius Milhaud, and Arthur Honegger. For example, Stravinsky's Concerto for Piano and Wind Instrument, composed in 1924, has a tendency towards Baroque music, and Hindemith's Violin Sonata Opus 31 No. 2 in 1924 uses easy-to-understand melodies and compositions, and the final movement is a variation on the melody of Mozart's Lied, Sehnsucht nach dem Frühling. If you would like to listen to music, please check the link in the summary. The other is the 12-tone technique. This music was invented by Schoenberg, the founder of the Second Viennese School, which was introduced in the first episode. Together with his students Weber and Berg, they have released various works since the mid-20s. The 12-tone technique is a systematization of atonal music that has been used since the 1900s. Suite Opus 25 for piano, completed by Schoenberg in 1923, is the first work to use 12-tone technique over all pieces. Based on this technique, Webern created the string trio Opus 20 and the symphony Opus 21, which sound like dense crystals. This technique attracted the attention of composers who were active after World War II and had an immeasurable impact on the later contemporary music scene. Now, let's look at Japan's 1920s. After World War I, the number of musicians studying abroad in Germany and France was gradually increasing, so the situation of learning Western classical music academically in Europe was even more than in the 1910s. The remarkable point is Kosaku Yamada, who was the first Japanese guy studying abroad in Germany between 1910 and 1914, and learned the contemporary musical style like Adler music and so on, basically composed with the Romantic style. It seems he weren't into contemporary music so much and had admiration for Romanticism. On the contrary, Tomojiro Ikenouchi and others studied abroad in the 1920s were composing by the style of contemporary music. Since Japanese composers born in the 20th century basically learned composition and harmony from them, so it is no exaggeration to say so-called contemporary music of Japanese composers began in the 1920s. The 1920s will progress in this way, but the tragedy will occur in the United States, which had been growing rapidly until then. In 1929, a stock market crash suddenly occurred on Wall Street in New York. This effect quickly spread to the whole world and became the Great Depression, and the situation in the world was headed for another huge war, World War II. What was the music in that disturbing world? Next time, I would like to focus on that. That's all for this time, so I will summarize it. After World War I, two major trends in music were newly born. One is called Neoclassicism in music, which is bright and cheerful with a simple style and simple melody, not the uneasy and unordered music reminiscent of the World War I. The other is 12-tone technique music, which is a systematization of atonal music that has been used since the 1900s. And this style will make great progress after 1945. Around the same time, in Japan after the war, the number of musicians studying abroad in Germany and France gradually increased, and the flow of learning Western classical music academically in Europe was created, so Japan's contemporary music began to move. That's it for this time. So next time I will talk about from 1930 to 1940. Thank you so much and see you soon.